My belief that God is the sustainer and animator of the whole of creation is somewhat controversial among Christians and others who believe in free will. After all, if we do not have free will, then ideas such as sin, the fall, and divine judgment don't necessarily make sense. However, I believe there is a certain perspective, or let's call it a framework, in which these central Christian ideas can be understood in a different light, stemming from an understanding of God's true nature and what this means for his relationship with human beings. In this video, I will briefly outline this framework. At the core of the framework is the idea that whatever you do is what God is doing through you. The best analogy I have found for this is that of a puppet show. In a puppet show, puppets can have distinct personalities and attributes and can be so realistic that a child watching the video may forget about the puppet master completely. We are puppets in the theatre of life, and God is the puppeteer. In order for you to accept what I am saying about the way God is involved in creation, I ask you to consider his attribute of omnipresence. If God is truly omnipresent, there is no particle in existence that is not a part of him. And it logically follows that everything that is a part of God must be under God's control. So, if God is omnipresent, he is also in control of everything in existence. Now, although much of the time I am aware of God as I go about my daily life, because he speaks to me or because I feel his presence, at other times I am not directly aware of God, and it is at those times that I feel as though I am a free agent. As a person to whom God has revealed himself, there are dimensions in my life when my experience of God can be particularly vivid, for instance during prayer or a praise and worship session. At other times, while doing some chores around the house, or working a job, or having a meal with friends, it's possible for me to be so absorbed in those activities that I lose that awareness. But just because I lose my awareness of God in some situations doesn't mean he goes away. He is still omnipresent and in control of every aspect of my life, from my thoughts and words, to the functioning of my body, to my every action. It simply means that there is a mode of mind that we experience as part of God's activity in our lives where he makes us forget about him. This is obviously an acute reality in the case of lifelong atheists, who may never have an awareness of God because he has totally veiled himself in their minds and lives. It seems that God does not reveal himself to everyone all of the time, and this is a central element in the game of life that God is unfolding. Let us consider what I am arguing here in relation to the Christian worldview. When we read the wonderful biblical narratives depicting the interplay between God and his creatures, we see that these stories reveal such interactions as command and obedience, action and judgment, or prayer and response. In a world where God is omnipresent, this is peculiar, as in reality God is in control of both the command and the obedience, the human actions and the subsequent judgment, and even the human prayers and his response to those prayers. One can imagine a puppet praying to its puppet master to understand what I mean. But let us consider this paradox in terms of the bigger question concerning who God is. God is the extremely powerful, uncaused, necessarily existing eternal being who created the universe and everything in it. He has all of eternity at his disposal. What will he do with all this power and all this time? It seems logical to me that he would create a complex universe, a cosmic playground, as a way of entertaining himself as the vast eons of eternity unfold. What I propose is that God has created this vast universe for his own pleasure, and unfolding the complex story of creation within the cosmic playground is God's pastime. In light of this, it makes sense that as part of his grand game, God would create complex and wonderful storylines such as those that we find in the Abrahamic religions and other religions. Within the framework that I have outlined in this video, Christianity makes sense, though not in a mainstream or traditional way. All of life is animated by God, so the decisions that a Christian makes, whether to obey Christ, whether to read the Bible, whether to visit their neighbour in hospital, whether to fast, repent and believe, all of these activities are the will of God in people's lives and a part of his grand game. The central events in the Christian story, the atoning sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross and his resurrection, are also part of God's storyline. Believing as I do in an omnipresent God, this is the only way that I can make sense of the Christian worldview. The fall is a part of God's will, and so is redemption. Sin is a part of God's plan, and so is salvation. Atheism is a part of God's plan, and so is faith. This is not what most Christians believe, but without this framework, Christianity makes no sense at all, because I believe the cherished Christian idea of free will is simply not compatible with the idea of God's omnipresence. If you're going to accept the sovereignty of God over creation, then you must also accept that we don't have free will, and therefore a framework such as that outlined in this video becomes a necessary way of making sense of the Christian worldview. Do you believe that God has the attribute of omnipresence? Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. In the next video, we'll look at the question of whether a relationship with Jesus Christ is the only way to have peace with God. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. This video series accompanies my new book titled God's Grand Game, which is available now from all major retailers. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of future videos.